Hi, everybody. Oh, I sound very loud. This is the first time they've used this today, so yes, hearing my own voice. Welcome to my talk today, and I'm really looking forward to getting into some detail on social. So let's start off. In the work I do, my clients are always telling me about three things that are getting in their way in terms of taking advantage of social media to grow their business. The first one is time. Not enough time. We're all busy. We're potentially single, one person running a business, maybe two, and we don't have to focus on things like operations, and sometimes social media or marketing in general gets put to the bottom of the list, not because it's not a priority, but ultimately if an order's been placed and you need to get the order to the client and the customer, then that's going to take priority over getting a post out which you haven't planned. So time is the first one. The other thing is being scared of making a mistake or looking silly. That sounds, nowadays there is far more visibility, or there can be if you get onto social, in terms of getting in front of the camera, being on video, etc. And people think, what if I say the wrong thing? What if that person thinks this of me? I don't know enough to say it. So that's the second big concern. And the third one is just complete overwhelm. There is so much information going on about social media, trends, what you should and shouldn't be doing. So I'm here today to show you how you can overcome some of these concerns and make you understand that even if it takes up some of your really, really valuable time, I'm also like a 1-2-man band that there's only a few of us and we are very short of time, but how to make that time count. So I hope to encourage you to do something rather than nothing in terms of your social media. And even if it's the one small step that can make a big difference, I hope by identifying these 7 trends with you today that you can take something away that can take an action. So just to kick off, let me introduce myself. I'm Anna Jones. I'm the founder of Your Agency, a social global marketing agency that I founded in Chicago. And I'm here with a mission to increase the visibility of female founders by mentoring them to strategically market their business, and also to just unleash the power of storytelling. So important. I'm a creative marketing expert who uses my commercial retail background. I ran flagships such as Marks & Spencer's and Topshop in the day. And I bring a real global perspective to my clients, so to help them to connect with the right people to help their business grow. So let's kick off with the first trend. Probably one that doesn't really come as a surprise to you. Short form video isn't going anywhere. The only place it is going is up in importance when it comes to your social media marketing this year. The biggest and most important thing is, don't be doing video for the sake of it. The most important thing is that the video that you are spending time to create is adding real value. It's going to be really personable, it's got to be really relatable, and it's got to be really authentic. But that doesn't mean it needs to be perfect, which is one of those barriers of that sort of reservation, am I going to look silly, all of that. I have to tell you, a year ago, you would have never seen me in front of a camera. You probably wouldn't have seen me on this stage. But I realised I had that light bulb moment where my account looked beautiful with gorgeous images on my Instagram account that was great eye candy, but no one knew who I was. How is someone going to buy from you if they don't know who you are? It's really, 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 I can't stress the importance that people like to talk to people. And therefore, it's really important you show up as your brand. So showing some of the behind the scenes. And how did I do that? I started, I predominantly use Instagram to grow my business. So I started with stories. Stories is a great way. It's only there for 24 hours. It doesn't have to be perfect. And you can start by showing snippets of yourself with behind the scenes. So you're starting to really bring that brand to life. So what's happening? How does my order get to me? Where are they actually making it? Some of that sort of transparency and bringing that brand to life is really, really vital to be able to connect with that target audience. So that's basically what I started. The first story I did was me on there in my head cringing, thinking, all I'm going to do is say who I am, what I do, and if anyone's got any questions, I'd love to connect with them. And over time, you just keep doing it. It doesn't necessarily get loads and loads easier, but the more you do it, and you've got to just ignore the vanity metrics, as I like to say. It doesn't matter if you're not getting tons and tons of traction. It will come, but it's a longer term gain to be able to do that. So that was the first step. Who here, just a bit of a quick show of hands, is not particularly comfortable when it comes to getting in front of a camera? Yeah, quite a large proportion of people. So yeah, video, like, it isn't going anywhere, but there's definitely some small steps you can start to take in terms of video, or just that behind the scenes. So it doesn't have to always be you talking, although that is probably the most powerful video form you can do. It's got to be, there's got to be some level of education, maybe some entertainment, but it's just about being really authentic and showing who you are, what you're on a mission to do, and why you're doing it. So that's the first really important thing. And it's also really important that if you are going to go down this journey of using video, that you do have a plan. It's quite easy when you're a bit overwhelmed and you don't know what to do, to potentially try and copy somebody else, like just because you think, oh, I could try that. Obviously, it would have your own spin because you'd be in it and it would be different. But try to really think creatively. The attention span of people today is probably the lowest it could maybe have ever been, because they're just bombarded with so many videos, so much information. So you want to catch them. So that first 3 seconds is the most important 3 seconds of any video that you're going to put out there, because that is the point. In that 3 seconds, that's the time that they need in order to capture the attention of the audience, for them to hopefully stay with you, watch the end of your video. If you get to the end of the video, then the algorithm, the dreaded algorithm, is going to start pushing that content out to more people, because they take that as a sign that people have enjoyed what you're sharing. So that 3 first seconds. So and the idea is that after the 3 seconds, something might change, or you pause to say something like really thought-provoking. So they think, oh, I want to know. Add that sense of curiosity to make sure they stop, think, how am I going to use that? So that's more around, Instagram and using that. But obviously, the other thing that confirms the power of video in your social media is the growth of TikTok. Whether you like it or not, it is turning into being much more now, moving away from some of that entertainment. It's becoming a commerce platform. And also, it's about education. So hashtags such as like Learn with TikTok are enormous hashtags that people search to find educating content. Last year, TikTok added the descriptions increased massively in size. Before, it would just be such a few words that you could add, whereas now the description goes up to 2,200 characters. So you've got much more chance to add value on top of your video with the content you're writing. But the most important thing, if you are going to go down the avenue of TikTok, is the titles. So the titles of your TikTok videos are all SEO compatible, which means what people are searching. Think, what is the pain point of my customer? Why might they be coming to me? What problem could I be solving for them? And add that to the title, because that's what's going to draw someone in. And it's when they search that question that they're trying to seek out the answer to, then the algorithm's going to push it out to them. Oh, the SEO, sorry, not the algorithm on the brain. It's going to push the content out so that more and more people get to see it. So SEO in the titles is something to really, really think about. But the thing is, it doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be this huge choreographed video, or you can use your iPhone. Silly tricks about using your phone is, this sounds ridiculous, but make sure it's clean. I know that sounds really crazy, but so many times it's in your bag or wherever it's been, wipe the screen. It instantly is going to look a higher quality video. Like, it sounds, I know, such a small thing, but it can make a big difference. Make sure it's really well lit. Make sure you add text, and if it is something where you're talking a lot, make sure you've got closed captions, so that people can, the 90, I don't know what the actual stat is, but such a huge percentage of people watch videos without sound. So to have the words of what you're actually saying is really, really important, so that your message gets out there. Thank you. So, thank you. 65% of people watch video without the sound on. Brilliant. So I think that's the other one. And then the third one, which is probably not talked about as much, but is definitely something to consider, and something in terms of future-proofing your brand and dependent on your target audience, thinking longer term rather than a short-term fix, is YouTube Shorts. YouTube Shorts has had huge investment. They are making a lot of changes. The length of them increased from 15 seconds last year to 60 seconds. And I mean, personally, I think this is potentially a really big opportunity for smaller brands, because there's not many people doing that. Whereas on some of these other platforms, there are more people doing it. So, when we talk about this overcoming of these stages, is what if you're creating a reel already and you just try it and see if there's any uptake on Shorts, because it's a different 25% of global traffic is going to YouTube. So it's a big pot of people that are there that maybe you haven't tapped into. I mean, I don't know if anyone uses YouTube Shorts. Don't know if you want to show a quick show of hands. No. So it's an untapped market, particularly for small business, and it's particularly for thinking for the future and that sort of younger generation that are coming up that will be customers hopefully one day, even if they're not them now. 2 seconds. Oh. Okay, so. And the other thing is, when we talk about it doesn't need to be perfect, etc., it's about taking your future clients or your existing clients on that journey. Today, in the various presentations we've had, we've talked, particularly in the last one, they talked a lot about how they were startups. They didn't even have their product yet decided, but they started already on their social media to start to build the connections, to start to build the community, to start to share their story in order to start to build up some momentum. So taking people on that journey in those videos is really, really key. So just in conclusion on video, it's one of the biggies, so they won't all be this long. You need to decide the right platform for your business. You need to ensure that video creation is high up on your list of priorities, because it's not going anywhere. And there are ways that can make you feel comfortable. I don't know if who's here tomorrow, but tomorrow morning, Kirsty and Andy are amazing. They are real experts, and they're coming to do a class. I chose to, when I wanted to really up my game in terms of my reels, I became a member of their membership, which I'm sure they'll talk about tomorrow. But I can say, hand on heart, it was one of the best decisions, because they've got a great community. You can ask the most silly questions in a closed Facebook group, and there's tons of tutorials, tons of content coming out all the time, and it really sort of helped to build confidence. And there's people there that have never put a video out. There's people that are more experienced. So some of those memberships, you can sign up to lots of memberships, but I'd say that's one of the ones that's better if you really want to start getting some traction with your reels. They're good. So, yeah. So let's move on to the next one. Community building should be central to any social media effort that you're doing. So why is that? Because community and relationships are everything in business, aren't they? It's not a new fact, but it's how you use your social media platforms in order to enable that. So I remember, I'm going to talk of a few people that have done this really well, and we can learn some lessons from. So Joe Wicks. Everyone knows Joe Wicks. But people might think, oh, Joe Wicks is this really famous guy, he's worth all this money. But he started by building his community. His story is all about how he spent hours and hours engaging before he even put up his first post. He stood in the rain in Richmond trying to get people to come to his fitness classes. But he spent the time, he had a genuine interest that he wanted more people to do exercise because it was going to make them feel better. And that is the message that he consistently delivered all the time. And that message then started to build people that bought into his idea and how he grew. So, it's worth remembering that, like, there's all that engagement is so important. So when you're first on your social media, and potentially if you're at the early stages of using social media, you need to think about, what I say to people is 80% of your time should actually be spent on engagement on other people's platforms with potential influencers, with potential clients. Often people fall at the first hurdle, which is, I don't know what to write, I don't know what to do. Even if you're hardly putting anything out, even if you had 3 or 4 posts, say, for example, on Instagram, but you were really active and you were doing some of the behind the scenes on your stories, it's going to start building up conversations. So yes, of course, it would be ideal if you were doing both. But if you want to start somewhere, actually, sometimes engagement is a better place to start than putting out some content. And you can start to use that audience as you build them to ask questions. So story polls, getting people's feedback and researching. That's the great thing is, it's never easier to connect with potential clients because they're there, over time, we've had lots of exposure to people that we would never have had exposure to now because of the power of social media. So I think that's a really important one. And the other one is both fitness related, but someone who has really nailed community in terms of building his brand is Ben Francis, who runs Gymshark. His first business he started in supplements. It didn't work, so he went into clothing and fashion and trying to make sort of fitness clothing more affordable to people that were looking for it. But what he actually did, the way he started, is he started on social and he started on it with events. So he didn't necessarily have tons of products to show them. He might have had 2 or 3 things, and it was him and his friends creating the products. But he got the right people, and we're going to talk a bit more on one of the next trends about influencers. But he built a passionate community who loved the fashion, who loved fitness, who could see what he was trying to do because of the way he told the story. That storytelling is so important, and he showed up as himself and really made sure that people were engaging, and he was engaging back in any way he could, and they started conversations. And that's how he's now grown this. Well, it's just been valued at like 1.3 billion. But his thing that we'll talk about is he used influencers, but for the long term. Sometimes people think, I'm going to reach out to that person, see if they'll do a giveaway with me. That's not going to work because that's not a relationship. That doesn't show a genuine interest in either side of the party. One, it might look like the influencer trying to get money. The other way, it's just like, oh, they're going to get me in front of some new people. Whereas he built all his business was on longevity of really great relationships in terms of the influence he works with. So he's very, very careful who he works with. I think I read nobody has a contract less than 1 year with the brand, and all the events, and they still do a lot of in real life, but with social as well. And so those events that he does have that influencer's name on, and it helps to really spread the word. So Gymshark is another really great example. And the final one is, as you see on this slide, this is a picture of Holly Tucker, who is, don't know if many of you know Holly Tucker, but a huge champion of small business in the UK. She's amazing. And she, for those that know, not on the high street, which I'm sure many of you do, she started that and started at the kitchen table and built a community where she wanted to showcase people that didn't have a shop front, which is the whole premise of not on the high street. And she's taken that onto her social media. And she literally lives and breathes small business. She does anything she can to support them, to shout out about them, but in a truly genuine way, that she then runs events, etc. And so I think, she's then built from her social media into real life events, to campaigns where she's then given resources for free to hundreds of small businesses in terms of shopping independent, for example. And so it all is about showing genuinely she's giving a lot away, which, we don't all have those necessarily that budget or whatever, but in a genuine passion for what she's talking about. And so showing genuinely what you're doing and practicing what you preach across your social media channels is going to really help build that connection with your audience. So here are just a couple of really quick ways that you can build that community that maybe you might not have used before. So we're looking at ways to reward and treat and recognize the customers that you've already got. So make sure that both sides of it is, the community building is for building your following, but it's also retaining and nurturing the people you've got. So one of the great tools that is that maybe not so many people know about is Close Friends. It's on stories in your Instagram. You can create your own group of close friends within that function. And part of that means that you can have certain content that's only seen by a certain group of people. So it's rewarding. So, and a good example of this is, her name's Vix Meldrew, and she's a coach. And what she does is anyone who's been on one of her courses, so if you're a service business, she offers up free content, extra content that she'll give as like an exclusive that's part of her close friends group. So people feel like, special because they've got something, she's building that relationship for the longer term rather than just, oh, great, I took your money and let's go. So she's one of those ones. And then an amazing brand that I got to love in Chicago was called Abby Alley. They're a sustainable handbag and jewelry brand. Now, what she did is she used her close stories to run all her sample sales. So you'd have exclusives. So sample sales were on there if there was... some faulty, where she was very particular about the quality of the products and it just was slightly par, she'd sell them off there. She might do, if she was going to an event, she'd tell them about it first. So it's a way of just almost treating that warm audience you've already got and keeping in contact with them so that they remember you, and when they then maybe need you again for a service or they want the next candle when it's run out, you're first on their mind. So it's about building that connection. So, they're two sort of close friends is a great way of using that. And obviously not forgetting, I talked very briefly about the great Facebook group with the Real Rock Stars with Kirsty and Andy, but Facebook is also not something particularly for nurturing a community, is a great tool in terms of having your community there and keeping in contact and giving them some content to think about. So there are lots of ways to do this. But you can do it on social. There are also, if you stay on social, these are the things you need to think about. But there's also other platforms that are becoming more and more popular. So it could be worth just having them on your radar. Substack, Slack, Telegram. They're kind of the ones that keep sort of coming up. So in terms of nurturing that, I think it's really important. So we've mentioned in the first trend how video offers great opportunity for your brand awareness. Well, community is doing exactly that, but it's also building that even deeper relationship and connection with your audience. So community building definitely is a trend that needs to be embraced. The power of authenticity and how it continues to rise in importance. So this is all, again, there's a common theme here about humanizing the marketing that you're doing. People want to talk to people. You are a person behind, there's always a person behind a brand, and showing that personality. And why is this important? Well, in a recent survey by TalkWalker, who do a lot of insights, a consumer has 306% higher lifetime value to you as a business if they have an emotional connection to you. That's a lot. So if you're, working on that connection and that real, honest conversations, and being honest when things don't go well, or you've tried to do something and it hasn't gone as well. I don't know if you saw, particularly at the beginning of the year, obviously you always get those posts that these were my highlights of last year. But actually there's a big trend to say, this is what I learned and this is how I'm going to do it differently. And the guys that were on the stage before me talking about sustainability, one of them had gone through the B Corp journey, and he was saying, we've said we tried to get to this point, and sometimes we couldn't always get to that point, but as long as we were honest with them to say, we're still working on it, we want to make a difference, etc., then having that honest, open conversation is only going to build the connection to be deeper. So again, appearing more real, the sort of less perfect content is going to perform better. That's what Instagram has announced. They don't necessarily want this perfect, curated, styled content. So ways that you could be showing up is behind the scenes we've talked about, showing a day in the company, humanizing by showing all the different, the faces in your brand, and then gain insight from that. And that is what will build you the authentic. Ask questions in your stories. People will start to tell you what they want to know, and that will steer you in the right direction. So this also is another stat that really stuck in my head when I was researching this. This is from Shopify. So 86% of consumers claim that authenticity is essential when deciding to buy from a brand. As we go into this, in this current economic situation, people are being more conscious of who they buy for, how they spend and where they spend and the amount they spend. So it's really, really important that you're showing up so that they think, well, I'm actually helping that person who's trying to do good. And authenticity has a whole plethora of meaning. It doesn't just mean showing up like I've talked a lot about. It's because people want to buy something real. They want to buy something that has a soul. But also nowadays they want to know more about what you're doing as a business for the environment, for the greater good. So it's not just about the person, it's about what the person is doing for a wider, but showing them what you're doing, not telling them. So before we might have put out, I'm now going for B Corp status or whatever, and this is the steps I'm doing. Whereas now you're showing them, actually we've had this real struggle, but we've been trying to go towards this goal, updating them where you are and moving on from there. So you're taking them through that journey, which is, again, that whole authenticity. So that's kind of the most important things. And particularly Instagram have actually come out and said that is what they value over perfect content. So that authenticity is what they're trying to attract, and they know that Gen Z, which TikTok is generally known to be a very Gen Z platform, that's how they're going to try and compete, because they're wanting to attract that younger audience to come in. And I'd also say that things like authenticity, it opens up a wider conversation. It opens up that two-way conversation, that some of that vulnerability content is what will perform best. And also imagine if you could have constructive feedback from your audience on a regular basis. If it's a two-way thing, they're going to help you shape in making mistakes in the future. So that's the first three trends. The first three trends, I've done this for a reason in an order, because these three are what are going to run through the next four. They are really, really central. I said, even today, some of the other presentations, they've all talked about authenticity being so, so important, about collaboration, about community. So the next few trends, this is kind of you'll see that this runs through. So influencer marketing's power, especially for smaller brands. So as we go into this year, quite often some of the bigger brands actually might tighten their belts a bit in the current economic crisis, but situation. So some of those budgets might shrink a little, which actually opens up an opportunity, because the influencer market is worth $104 billion. And so it's a huge, huge market. And Instagram announced only recently that they are going to be making 2023 is all about the creator community and how they're going to make it easier for people to monetize their content, and how they want to give them the tools to get more and more creative. So as this market grows, there's more and more people trying to grab the attention of different people. But they're going to be given more tools, and also you've got to remember, these guys, they're experts at what they're doing. So building up that long-term relationship that we talked with, like Gymshark's case, is really, really important, because they're going to know what their audience likes better than you, actually. So let them be creative, obviously within the realms, but let them be creative, and they're more likely to resonate with your audience. So it's basically going to get more diverse and more creative in 2023. And that whole partnership is so, so key. A brand I recently came across, which shows just how this was a brand that was started in mid-pandemic. It's called Panty. It's a UK underwear brand that's all about made by women for women, and it's all about making underwear more comfortable, but also by using dead stock fabric. So taking the stock that would have otherwise been thrown away by the clothing industry, and using that to make better products that's more comfortable. Now, they started using influencers and using social media tools to listen to the audience of like what they wanted. So they knew that they wanted more comfortable underwear. It wasn't all about like posing in something necessarily like lacy or whatever. They wanted to make it, but they also knew that there was a big audience that was growing for being pro-mindful shopping and making a difference in terms of waste, etc. So they took those two messages that they listened to before they even had they were working on the product at the time, and they expanded that range. And so I don't know Amanda McCourt who set it up, but this would be my suggestion and a good way of finding out if an influencer or where the influence that you might need for your size business is hanging out. So she probably took an influencer that was very big in the mindful shopping space, and started to listen, so we call it social listening, so listen to what the audience, so what were the comments that were being made on that influencer's conversations. She probably thought, it's not achievable, I'm only new, I'm only starting, to go to that top person in pro-mindful shopping, but actually there were lots of people that were having conversations around what she was talking about. So she started engaging, most likely, with those people that are like the next tier down. So then you start having these conversations, and that's where she then probably built. Now, I can't say that's true. Maybe she was and I think with influence, you have to remember they're only human. Some people are like, oh, I could never ask that person. I'm like, but what's the worst that can happen? All they could do is say no. If you do your research, you really work out what's important to that person. You can tell them how you're going to add value to them and help them, earn money, because ultimately for many of these creators it is now their job. But how it's going to be a two-way thing, you never know who might take that bait. Another story on this one was, I run a series of interviews with female founders, and Natalie runs a company called Medium Room, and they train in vintage art. So obviously it's a growing trend. She started on Instagram. It was a small business based in the Cotswolds, and she asked a friend who had a very successful jewelry business, what's the one thing I could do that would really help me get my message out, how I love vintage art. So she was being very genuine. She loved all those things that we've talked about already in terms of genuine, loving art. She had a good taste. She said, the best thing you can do is just direct message, very powerful direct messaging, people. And you can just say, this is what I'm doing, I love it. Just a genuine, hello, this is me. And basically, Alex Stedman, who has a big blog, it was called The Frugality, but she posted something about her just to say, oh, wow, I've gone on this, Natalie reached out to me, and I can't believe the amazing gems she's got on her site. Natalie is actually a good friend of mine, and the next day her account went from 1,000 following to 10,000. It was it just blew it up. So I think the only reason I tell you this story is that's not going to happen to everyone. It has never happened to me. But what I'm saying is you just never know if you don't ask. People, you don't need to be afraid to ask someone, because the worst they can say is no, and you're like, okay, move on. But if you don't ask, if someone then suddenly mentions you, it gets into some sort of press, and it doesn't have to always be on social. You just don't know where that might lead us in terms of an opportunity. So don't be afraid to approach different people in that creator market that could really help escalate and grow your business. So, and the final thought that I want to leave you on influences is 60% of consumers trust the fidelity of an influencer review, which is nearly twice the number of people that would trust brand content. So that just shows that people buy into that influencer. So whether it's it could be a blogger. If they know and love their taste, trust what they've been saying, have gone and already bought from totally different brands that they love and thought, actually, I might try that. That power is so important. It's not you telling them that your product's great. It's somebody else telling you. And that's what you've got to try and create this year. Other people, go back to traditionally, word of mouth is how you grow your business. And that's really what you've got to think is that's what social is. You want people to be talking about your business for you on your platform, whether that's an influencer that you've spoken to or that's just your customers because they love what you're doing. So just making sure you're building that up is really, really key. And don't be disheartened. People might take longer to convert at the moment. There is some level of buyer sort of hesitancy, and they want to make sure it is the right decision as we're more careful with what we spend. But it's really, really important. And one of those other sort of key trends to think about, it taps into it, doesn't need to be perfect, it's quite low production cost, is live shopping. Live shopping is set to grow exponentially in the coming, like, I think it's 4 years, the stat I had, because you're able to get, it basically will notify your whole audience that you've gone live, so that's instantly putting you straight like up there. It's a great way of building a community because you're hosting an event, so people are, oh, you going to that live shopping event, and people are chatting around it. You're getting real feedback at the time of the event, so people might say, well, you know, they'll be giving you constant stream of feedback, which takes much longer if you're manually sort of collecting it and reaching out to clients. And it gives them, I think that the value that it can add, again, it's also, you're there live, so you're just being you because you've got to be, it's not going to be a stage thing because you haven't practiced it. So again, it adds to that whole authenticity message. So it's massive. It's Catherine earlier talked about how one live shopping event, the girl had, in 2 hours, had made $50,000 in a live shopping event. Obviously, these numbers are like the wow ones that aren't for everybody, but it just shows that it's just, I think it's an untapped market that's coming. Instagram are talking about it much more for this year. So just watch this space and think about live. Again, it's video, but it's a great way of getting that feedback. But in terms of commerce, which we're going to move on to next here. So social commerce and shoppability is going to expand. So in 2022, Instagram and TikTok increased the ways that you could shop directly on their channels. So Reels became with shoppable links. And so there were lots more opportunities to make it easier. And when it comes to social commerce, the most sort of simplest message is you've just got to make it easy for people to click buy. So if you can take out any of those barriers using those links in your stories to go to your website, and obviously whether you want to spend the budget on setting up an Instagram shop, it's not a huge investment, but there are obviously, I have to say, there's costs involved, but like that, you know, Instagram shop is a huge opportunity potentially. And so, lost my train of thought there. Wait one moment. Totally the key video. Well, it's basically making sure that you're making it as easy, taking down any barriers in order for people to shop. Okay, social search. Using social media, hang on. Okay, social media is fast becoming the search engine. So just to get a bit of involvement from everyone, when you made your last purchase through social, did you search for it first on a social media channel? Put your hand, let's have a, definitely me, no? Okay, so it's probably actually not quite as high as I did, but what the trend is that people are using social to research their purchase. Basically, social search is becoming more and more popular. So in order for this to be beneficial to you, we need to look at how you can boost your social SEO. So that's how people, when they're searching for companies like yours, or they're searching for a specific product, how you show up before other people. So just as a search engine, such as Google would work, is how they're doing that now, that's becoming how people shop much more on social. So here are some key things that you could be doing to make sure you're optimized in terms of that social searching. So the first one is your bio, so whether that's on TikTok, whether that's on Instagram, needs to be optimized by containing keywords. So it's worth thinking about, what are people searching when they're trying to find your brand? Like, what are those keywords or the products that you're selling? So answering your target audience's pain points, but also those keywords, it's really important that they're in that, because that's all SEO compatible. Then when it comes to creating your content, you need to include the hashtags in your post, because the hashtags in your post, whether you like the look of it or not, they are keywords that are searchable, and that will boost your SEO for that post and that content. So it's not the same if it's in the first comment. This advice changes regularly, but that is the current advice. And then we touched on it before, but ensuring that you have closed caption on any video content you are sharing. Now, I gave the first reason earlier, which was that such a high percentage, 65% of people are watching without the sound on. But the other thing is that you're optimizing your search value if you've got words coming up on it. So it's really, really important that closed captions are included. So always make sure that you. And then the final thing is, when you're actually speaking, although you want it to be as natural as possible, keywords when you're speaking is also really key. Keywords, keyword, key. So just make sure you're doing that. And then the final thing is tag your location. So on your posts, now, I don't know if you're aware of Instagram maps. So basically, if you're in an area and someone looks by area, you could come up. So making sure that you're part of tagging your location in Instagram maps. And the other thing that's the current advice is, if you have multiple locations, that you have a Facebook page for each of those, for every one of them, not just a group one. Because again, it's all part of that finding you more easily and pushing your content out. So the ultimate goal of SEO and the social search is that it increases your chances of being found and coming up when your target audience are looking for products like yours. And then the final one is using social media as your primary customer care tool. So we've talked about this whole humanizing your brand, talking much more. I probably haven't really stressed enough how powerful direct messaging is, whether that's your existing audience or people you're trying to reach out to, but having that two-way conversation. But if we think about it now, as a brand, you've never been more accessible. And the easiest, people want to talk to people now about their problem, like whatever it is, as small, as big as it is, it'll be big to them, and you want to solve it as quickly as possible, because ultimately they can go public if they aren't necessarily satisfied with what they've got. So it's really, really important in terms of retaining those current clients, but also as a point of difference, because your service and the experience you're offering people is what's going to make you stand out when it comes. Because there could be 5 people selling a handbag, but if you're showcasing the type of service, how you package it, how you make them feel, and some of those testimonials of like the unboxing or the influencer unboxing, people buy into that. That might be the tipping point of them choosing you over somebody else. So that customer care is making sure also, though, that you're following all your hashtags, any hashtag that's linked to your business. So if you've got your own, make sure you're tracking it, and any comment on any channel you're replying to. If someone comments on your post, always reply. It's just, well, I'd say it's just good manners, but it's also just, it just shows you, it's a sign of showing care, really. And also, if there's, an opportunity for stories to go, to maybe even go live with people about their experience in terms of customer care, just have that full transparency, and also tell those stories around that. Again, I'm just going to go back to Gymshark, man, but he he had a problem. I don't know exactly when it was, but on a Black Friday, his whole website went down. Like, people couldn't buy, people were disappointed, and they obviously went straight onto social media, whether it was Twitter, wherever they were. Can't get on, the website's down, the website's down. Obviously, this is like not great press, but he turned that situation using social media, but also good old-fashioned customer service. He personally wrote 2,500 handwritten notes to the customers that had missed out, because they obviously have sophisticated technology to know who was trying, and went back to them to say, I'm so sorry, here's a discount. Well, that's, anyone that writes a handwritten note in a box always, personally, I always find that makes a difference. Like, it's just nice to have a handwritten note when you're buying something from a small business. And so he chose to do that. And obviously then that's another story to tell. And it's all that power of storytelling. And, some people might say, well, he wanted the press. I don't think it was. I think he's just he was so devastated that had happened on that day, and he wanted to make a difference. So that is really, really important. This is the final one of the 7 trends. So social customer care, building your community, nurturing it, and making sure that this is really a way that you can stand out in terms of your service in this sort of highly competitive market. So, as always, social is an ever-evolving area of marketing, but it's a vital one for you as a small business to use for success and growth this year. Not all of these trends are relevant to you all, but the one thing is showing up authentically as a human wherever and whenever possible is really, really important. Technology has changed, and the way we do that's changed, but actually there's still the same human need of that connection, of that someone caring about you. And so showing that through your social media, through that personalized, humanized experience is what is going to make you stand out. I mentioned at the beginning what is stopping my clients from benefiting from the huge opportunity of social media. And I just want to leave you with this. I don't want you to be daunted. When it comes to time, social media is not this year a nice to do. It's a necessity for you to be a competitive, successful brand. But you don't need to do everything at once. It's all about small steps. If you can take 1 or 2 things, I hope today you can take 1, 2, 3 or 4 things away that can make a difference, and hopefully start to really get some different ideas for your business in sort of ways and trends that you can tap into. But I'd love to, if, as I said, my name's Anna. I'm at Your Agency on Instagram. You feel free to email me, and I will be staying potentially at the end for any questions. But yeah, thank you.